Soon, the two best teams in football will be coming here to Atlanta for Super Bowl 28.
And we'll be right here to greet them.
Show them our town and its Southern hospitality.
And catch all the action leading up to the big game.
Join Nick and Fred for Sports Tonight at the Super Bowl on CNN.
He wants to lay the groundwork for next year's agenda. First and foremost, getting health care reform passed, guaranteeing private insurance to every American. And he thinks that by pushing that forward tonight, we can get some momentum behind the bill.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Pat Buchanan. Tonight, Blueprint for America. In the Crossfire, Republican Senator Phil Gramm of Texas and Democratic Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts.
Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. 90 minutes from now, President Clinton will deliver his first formal State of the Union address. And as Mr. Clinton rides up to Capitol Hill, his spirits must be soaring. For the economy is booming, and his approval rating is higher than Ronald Reagan's was after his first year in office. After 12 long years, Democrats are again humming, "Happy days are here again." The focus of Mr. Clinton's address is expected to be on domestic policy, with health care, welfare reform, and crime control all getting equal time. But don't expect anything new, we are told, though the White House will claim that its policies have already produced a huge reduction in the federal deficit. So tonight, the salad days of the Clintonites. How long can they last, Michael?
That was a remarkably generous introduction, Pat. We've entered an era of good feelings, as you can hear this, Phil Gramm. The economy's booming, the deficit's shrinking, the Republicans are coming around on health care reform. I'll give this to you. The Democrats are coming around on crime. The Democrats and Republicans are virtual agreement on welfare. This could be a very productive and amicable session of Congress unless you guys decide to be the skunks at the picnic. Is that your plan?
Well, Michael, I think there's a strong element of truth in what you say. I think if the president will give up on the idea of having the government take over and run the health care system.
Now, there you go.
If he'll give up on the idea of taking away from people the right to choose their insurance and their doctor.
There you go.
If the president will put his program where his mouth is on crime, and I'm glad, you got to remember last year he cut prison construction by $580 million. He and the Attorney General spent the year trying to repeal minimum mandatory sentencing. Tonight he's going to do a 180, and I welcome him to being on the right side. Finally, in welfare reform, the American people want everybody on welfare to either work or to go to school. They want more people to get out of the wagon and help to pull it, and if the president will support those things, he's going to have no stronger supporter than me.
The president was back on that one long before the Republicans were. That's been his...
I think the problem, Michael, and again, I'm hoping tonight we're going to hear a concrete program that will really take people off welfare, that will really push people out of the wagon and help them get a place at the traces. I am concerned, forgive me, but in the past, when Democrats have talked about welfare reform, they've meant more spending, not less. I hope it's different.
Well, now,
tonight.
wait a minute, because the truth about 2 years and you're out, which everyone agrees on, Republicans and Democrats, is that it will cost more at first. You got to give people, you got to supply people with, it costs more to put people to work than to just send them a check. That is the bitter truth which you have avoided and which Clinton's avoided, too.
I think, let me tell you what I'd like to do.
So if you're serious about welfare reform, you've got to be prepared to spend a little money on it. Are you prepared?
I think the key is to do this, is to require everybody on welfare to either go to school, and with welfare mothers at home, we can do a computer-based correspondence course tailored to their needs. We can require everybody to work, pick up paper on the streets, clean up public parks.
Won't that cost more than the current system, which nobody likes, at least at first?
No, I think what will happen is if people have got to work anyway, they'll decide to go out and get a job.
John Kerry, let me quote you what the president's going to say tonight. They've released these excerpts. It says, our goal is to guarantee private insurance for every American, something proposed by Richard Nixon more than 20 years ago. That's what we want, guaranteed private insurance. Is the president moving away from his idea based on some of this criticism of socialized medicine he's got?
No, it's not, but that's the point. You guys keep throwing these terms out, and you love it. This is the way politics is played here. Throw out socialist medicine. Phil comes in and says you want choice. It's not. You guys apply a lot of arguments to something that doesn't exist. This is a program of choice. You can choose which program you want. And it's going to be much more, it's already happening.
I'm going to let Phil Gramm take care of that, but let me get John Kerry look.
Well,
I think what most Americans say is...
But the minute we point out a truth, you want to move away from it. I mean, I'm trying to point out the reality of what the president is offering.
Let me get one point in here. I think what most Americans are saying, look, if there's people that want health insurance and don't have it, let's find a way for them to get it.
Correct.
But I've got a fine program. Don't take over my program. Don't socialize it. I mean, don't change my program. Take care.
But you see, you're saying socialize. This is a competitive system. I don't happen to agree with all of the system. And the system the president has put together is at least the opening gambit of the first discussion of a major problem this country faces, which you and your folks and your president avoided for years.
Well, now, wait,
finally,
Nixon tried to do it 20 years ago.
Avoided for years. That's right. He was the last Republican to do it. And since then, you've had Ford, Reagan, and Bush, and none of them did it.
Bill Graham's going to handle this.
Unfortunately,
let me make the substantive point.
Let me respond, if I may.
Well, it's not a response. It's a filibuster.
No, yours is a filibuster.
All right.
Look, here's the point. Under the president's plan, your private health insurance is going to be canceled. You're going to have to buy health care and health insurance through a government collective, and there's going to be a $10,000 fine.
It is not a government collective.
Page 241 of the president's plan. Let me read you this. An entity that knowingly and willfully offers a supplemental health benefit policy to any individual shall be subject to a civil monetary penalty of not to exceed $10,000.
This is how you misrepresent.
It's such a great program. He's got to find people who compete with him.
You've got to go through an alliance which is run by consumers.
Run by the government.
It's not run by the government.
Who will these people work for it? The government.
It's a mutual alliance. It's run by consumers, and it's got to. Anyone can offer. Anyone who's now offering insurance can offer insurance under this system.
Let me give you another example of how you sort of switch these things around. A moment ago, you said, "I hope the president's going to turn around on crime." You know and I know, because we were both on the floor of the Senate, that when we took that bill from $6 billion to $22 billion, it could only have happened because the President of the United States was willing to sign off.
No, I'm sorry,
Byrd.
the President has never endorsed that funding mechanism. I was the co-sponsor of it with Senator Byrd.
The President has endorsed
never
the Senate crime bill.
Wait a minute, John,
never till this day has he endorsed that bill.
You got this new
I wish he would endorse it, but he never has.
3 years, and they throw away the key. Excuse me, 3 violent felonies.
Three strikes and you're out.
3 strikes, you're out. I mean, Bill, you guys are 94-1 on that. Bill Clinton's behind it. Mario Cuomo's behind it. Even liberal Democrats are saying, Michael is saying, look, okay, you guys won the argument. We're getting behind that. Isn't that true?
I'm not saying that.
So,
Mike, you're the only one that's not so far.
Don't put me in that
But I think, again, you characterize, you say, even liberal Democrats. Joe Biden and I were the people who tried to get 100,000 cops on the street 6 years ago, and Phil Graham and his friends voted against it. They were unwilling to pay to put cops on the streets in America 6 and 7 years ago. Yes, sir. I'll show you.
You were trying.
I'll show you.
You were trying to overturn Supreme Court decisions that had strengthened law enforcement.
We were trying to trying to very simply put 100,000. But we wanted more cops.
You don't deny that the president last year cut construction for prison by $580 million, and he and the Attorney General spent the whole year trying to overturn minimum mandatory sentencing, and the president tonight is doing a 180.
The president is not. The president came in, and you know as well as I do what the budget process is, and has now gotten a handle on the budget, which your president and party failed to do even under your wonderful Graham law, that didn't reduce the deficit.
Wouldn't Graham
pay for this bill?
Wouldn't Graham Rudman, that's a very good point. Wouldn't Graham Rudman, with your famous bill, with its across-the-board spending cuts, have cut prison spending like any other kind of spending?
It did.
Not if we met the target, but let me tell you, I came up with Senator Byrd. I came up with Senator Byrd with $20 billion of savings by limiting the size of the federal bureaucracy to pay for this program, and never to this day has the president.
You come across the board spending cuts.
Al Gore had that in the performance standards, and that John Tilley on Senator Mitchell's staff came up with that mechanism.
This is inside baseball.
You
embraced both on the ground.
Offered the amendment, and the administration didn't even support it.
Settle this during the commercial. Let me ask you, since we're on crime. Clinton, I'm not on board. Every other, John Kerry, Bill Clinton, everybody else is on board on this 3 strikes and you're out provision. The Republicans are now talking about upping the ante to 2 strikes and you're out. It's sort of a bidding war going on. Do you go that far? 1 strike and you're out? Where does it stop?
I think the 3 strikes and you're out is a good provision, but I want 10 years in prison without parole for possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime or a drug felony, 20 years for discharging it, life imprisonment for killing somebody and the death penalty in aggravated cases.
Let me ask you, John Kerry, let's get to the basics.
I want the president to be for it.
All right, there's no question about it. I think Republicans are moving toward the idea they got to do something on health care. But it seems to me on both crime and on welfare reform, the hard line, which has traditionally been associated with Republicans, is prevailing. We don't hear any more liberal rhetoric about root causes and all the rest of it. You're taking a tough line on this and a tougher line on welfare reform. In other words, hasn't Ronald Reagan's argument prevailed on these issues? I mean, what is a new Democrat other than one that's moved over toward Ronald Reagan?
But, Pat, that's the problem, is that you deal in such sort of simplistic and stereotype terms. You automatically think that because somebody is a Democrat or, quote, a liberal, they haven't been pushing these things for a long time. I'm a prosecutor. I sent people to jail for their life. I've tried people for murder. I've been fighting to get these things since I came to the Senate. But we had a president named George Bush and Ronald Reagan who were unwilling to spend an additional dime on these programs. The cuts in police took place in the last 8 and 10 years. The cuts in our prison money took place. When I came in to the Senate in 1984, we were just off the law enforcement assistance program of the late 70s, early 80s. We were putting more money into the federal assistance of crime under President Carter than we ever did under Bush and Reagan. In fact, they cut it down to some, $900 million, $650 million a year. It used to be $2.7 billion. Now we're finally getting back.
Cut you off, Phil. All right, very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly. I just can't sit here and let you say that prison construction was cut under Ronald Reagan and George Bush. We adopted $3 billion in 1 year to build prison.
All right, hold on. All right, you said it would be brief.
Federal level, not at the state level.
Hey, you boys.
Not at the state level.
Cut
you did not provide assistance to the state.
No, neither one of you.
You're welcome.
Hold on. We're going to try and move this discussion from the 80s and the early 90s back to 1994 after this break.
There are very serious problems in crime, in welfare, and in health care. It is our responsibility as Americans and as public officials to deal with them, and I hope and will try very hard to see that we do deal with all three of them this year.
Kennedy, the legend.
I suppose really the only two dates that most people remember where they were was Pearl Harbor and the death of President Franklin Roosevelt.
Kennedy, the leader.
I support strongly the Constitution. I support strongly the separation of church and state. I believe it's the best arrangement for our society, that I shall continue my devotion to the Constitution and support of it.
Kennedy, the man.
Well, I attended Harvard. I just finished there this June. I'm interested more or less in working sometime in my life for the government, but I haven't really decided as yet.
Time magazine proudly presents what must be considered one of the most comprehensive videos ever produced on the private life of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. This is his story, told in his own words and pictured in film clips, many never before seen by the public, taken from the archives of the Kennedy Library. In addition to these rare moments of film, Time magazine has searched its own picture archives to bring you the most complete picture story of Kennedy's life ever told. And now this collector's video can be yours, free, with your paid subscription to Time magazine. Time lets you focus on major events, politics, the arts, and social issues. If it's important to you, you'll find it in Time. Call now and you can get 25 issues of Time magazine for 3 installments of $9.89 each. That's almost 60% off the cover price, and we'll include this Kennedy video for free. Call now and you'll get even more. 30 years of history-making photos, a chronicle of the 60s, 70s, and 80s as our special thank you for acting promptly. So call right now and get great savings on Time magazine, the remarkable Kennedy video, and the extraordinary book, 30 years of history-making photos, free. Call now.
It's our obligation not just to oppose, but to provide alternatives, and some try to work it out, try to help. But where we have a basic fundamental difference in principle, then we'll flatly oppose efforts if we think it's taking America in the wrong direction.
I love Bob Dole. Welcome back to Crossfire. In just over an hour, President Clinton delivers his first official State of the Union address. Just to warm up the audience room, we're here discussing the State of the Union with two distinguished members of the United States Senate, all of whom are distinguished, of course. John Kerry, Democrat of Massachusetts, and Phil Gramm, Republican of Texas. Pat.
John Kerry, business leaders were polled and asked what was responsible for the good news in the economy, and there is real good news. And by 84-2, they said it was the business cycle, not Bill Clinton. Now, what has Bill Clinton done to get this economy really rolling besides the $250 billion tax increase?
Well, first of all, the $250 billion tax increase, Pat, as you know, applies only to people, 1.2% of Americans, people earning more than $180,000 a year. So let's deal with who's really affected here. The president has actually given a tax cut to the lower income Americans through your earned income tax credit, a tax cut to the 4.5 million Americans who've been able to refinance their home to the tune of $10 billion in this country. And so interest rates are lower than they've ever been. The deficit, most importantly, is down. Something George Bush couldn't do, something Ronald Reagan couldn't do. And you can't tell me, and not one of those business leaders can tell me, or any of us fairly, that if the budget hadn't passed that the president put in, and we had continued down a road of increasing the deficit, that they would be feeling as good, or that the country would be doing as well.
Go ahead, Phil. No, I ask the questions. You don't answer.
Well, can I comment on that?
No, well, you can respond.
No economist would argue that a change in government policy has any impact on the economy in less than 18 months. Well, what we're seeing today has nothing to do with Clinton policies. We will begin to see next year what those policies have an impact. Don't forget the president raised taxes on every Social Security recipient making over $36,000 a year. He raised gasoline taxes on every American. But they would be lower still. He didn't lower gas prices. He didn't lower interest rates.
You know, I can't. Can you look at me and look at the camera with a straight face and say that if the news was bad now, if interest rates were up, if the economy was in the doghouse, if the stock market was down, you would be saying you cannot blame President Clinton for this. He had absolutely nothing to do with it.
I would say something that I know to be true, which is we have seen virtually no instances in the economic history of this country where the policy impact of a change in government policy has been fully felt in less than 18 months. So I can't make up facts to suit my case.
You don't think, Michael, that Clinton's policies have really started the fourth quarter
soaring? You think they lowered interest rates, Michael?
Oh, yes, I absolutely do, because the deficit reduction gave the credit markets
The deficit reduction came from the 1990 budget summit cap on spending, which Bill Clinton under law couldn't break. He raised taxes.
Are you defending the budget deal of 1990?
No, I voted against it, but it had a positive impact. It had a positive impact in that it set in law a spending total that Bill Clinton couldn't breach.
The 1990 budget deal was very healthy, the best thing George Bush ever did until he renounced it, and Bill Clinton's budget deal of last summer built on that. Now, that's just to get you on the record.
Yeah, please.
At what point exactly can we have you back on this show and where I can say to you, things are booming, does Bill Clinton get credit, and will you say yes?
June 1994, right?
I think you could have me back in... I would say probably August. At that point,
August is halfway through his term. He starts getting credit.
Well, but the point is, as I said, we have studied business cycles from the beginning of the Republic, and traditionally you're looking at about 18 months.
We'll have you back.
John Kerry, let me read you another line, which again, the White House is putting this stuff out. They said it. I hope they just didn't send this to me. He's going to say this tonight. This year, many people urged me to cut our defense spending again so we could pay for other government programs. I told them no. I mean, when did Bill Clinton become a strong on defense? In other words, rhetorically, he is moving toward the Republican position on issue after issue.
On rhetoric.
In rhetoric.
The reality is he's cutting the hell out of defense.
The cuts that are in... You can't have it both ways. If you say his budget hasn't taken effect, and in order to claim it for the general economy, it hasn't taken effect in terms of the cuts on defense. The cuts on defense are the defense cuts that were put in by the same agreement that you can't blame Clinton for.
Defense cuts
You can't have it both ways
this year. I'm not saying...
You are. You're trying to have it both ways. You're blaming him for what's bad.
What you're doing and the impact is having on the economy.
The fact is that Bill Clinton, to answer your question, the president did say no. And you know, and I know, that there was a big tug of war with Les Aspin.
Over this $50 billion for 5 years?
The whole question.
In fact.
But the president
restored that money?
Is that what you're saying?
One of the reasons Aspin left is that because the president underfunded his defense commitments by $50 billion.
I think the other reason that Aspin left is the president asked him to leave.
Well, the point is, though, why? The point is because Aspen saw that the commitment the president had made in policy was not there in the budget.
I think
to say he's not cutting defense is just disingenuous.
The president clearly has reduced the overall expenditure, but he has not gone, and all he is saying in that statement is, some sought 50% reductions.
Right. He's backhanding the liberals who want more. Okay, let me ask you this.
No, I think he's trying to be realistic.
Policy. He's getting pretty good marks in public and foreign policy, but Bosnia has been bungled, I think you would agree. Haiti was certainly bungled.
Bosnia was bungled before Bill Clinton became
Somalia was a tragedy. Why do you think he's getting fairly good marks on foreign policy? Is it, do you think because he's moved to a position, excuse me, Phil Graham, of neo-isolationism or non-interventionism?
On the contrary, he's getting good grades.
That's where the country wants to go?
I just came back from a trip both to the Far East, and I was in Paris and London talking with NATO officials and French and British officials after the summit. He gets extremely high grades because the Partnership for Peace is a sensible approach to the problems of both the Eastern Bloc countries and Russia. He has stayed the course with the difficulties in Russia. He has done, I think, an outstanding job of forming what is a new defense relationship for Europe, which is very much, I might add, different from the approach of Phil Graham and others who had a late response. But let me just finish. Let me just finish.
Everybody's a member of NATO, so nobody's a member of NATO.
What's your position on that? Are you in favor of letting them all in NATO or not?
My position is that there's Central European countries that should be brought under our defense shield. That's my position.
And the president agrees. The president agrees with that, but he is doing it at a pace that is sensible. Look, you ask the defense minister of Great Britain or France.
I've never had a foreign official comment positively on Clinton's foreign policy.
No, I'm just telling you they did, and the reason is, look, the practical
You talk to a different official. You probably talk to the same officials as Senator Kerry, and they say different things than they say to you.
You can't even make the fundamental decisions of deployment now. They're not ready to make the military integration. They're not ready to make
you both off. Thanks, John Kerry. And I didn't even get to ask you about Bobby Ray Inman.
If one country would have supported military involvement in Bosnia, the president would have intervened.
Hold on, we got to cut you both off. Thanks a lot, both of you.
Thank you.
Pat and I will have a little State of the Union address in just a moment.
In a changing world, one company is changing the way the world communicates. With the nation's #1 cable network year after year, and the world's leader in television news. From the fastest 30-minute news service to original productions, sports, and timeless motion pictures. And now, the one and only 24-hour Cartoon Network. Programming for the world at Turner Broadcasting today.
Leaving your job means deciding where to put the money from your retirement distribution. Rolling it into an IRA is smart, but paying annual fees and mutual fund sales charges at the start can set you back. To make all your money work for you, roll it into a Schwab no annual fee IRA. It's guaranteed free of annual fees for the life of the account. And with Schwab's Mutual Fund One Source service, you can invest in over 200 no-load mutual funds from well-known fund companies and pay no sales charges. That way, every dollar you invest goes to work for you from the start. And to help select the funds that may be best for you, this Mutual Funds Performance Guide is yours free when you open an IRA account. To find out more about the Schwab no annual fee rollover IRA, call 1-800-5-NO-LOAD. Get the IRA with the information you want without the fees you don't. Call 1-800-5-NO-LOAD today. So to make all your rollover money work for you,
maybe it's time to come to Schwab.
At CNN, our business news starts early. Before you head out the door, we'll brief you on the business day ahead, update the markets every hour, and then on Moneyline, put it all in perspective.
Moneyline with Lou Dobbs, weeknights, and business news throughout the day on CNN.
Michael, Bill Clinton's first year, 1.6 million new jobs were created in this country. You said that's a great record. Ronald Reagan created 2 million a year for 8 straight years, and you said that was a failure. Where is the consistency?
Fewer jobs were created in the 80s. I told you time and time again that were created in the 1970s.
Michael. Fewer
jobs were created under Ronald Reagan than under Jimmy Carter.
Michael.
Bill Clinton's bringing us out of a recession.
That's when the
6% growth in the fourth quarter.
How can it be a success to grow 1.6 million jobs when Reagan's supposed to be a failure and did $2 million a year for 8 years.
He inherited a recession. We're coming out of a recession.
That's when job growth is greatest.
Let's see how Clinton does in 8 years, Pat. Then we'll talk about it.
He's not going to be here 8 years.
I threw you that one on purpose to upset you. From the left, I'm Mike Kinsley. Good night for Crossfire.
On the right, Pat Buchanan. Join us tomorrow night for another edition of Crossfire.
The face of news is changing, and the best place to see it is on cable. ABC News correspondent Lisa McCree hosts the new Lifetime magazine, tackling stories from a new point of view, yours. And then stay tuned and meet Marjorie Clapprood. Let's spell that. Controversy, politics, women's issues, and more. Watch Clapprood live. Cable gives you something to think about on Sunday nights.
Warner Cable. Better
Revenue Service. 71-year-old LaRouche says he plans to run for president in 1996. The fringe candidate ran his last presidential campaign from his prison cell in 1992, and the Supreme Court ruled last year that LaRouche was entitled to matching federal funds for that campaign. Once convicted of lying to Congress, Iran-Contra figure Oliver North now wants a seat in the United States Senate. North's conviction was overturned, and his legal ordeal made him a hero to many conservatives. He's expected to announce his candidacy tomorrow in Virginia. The retired Marine now runs a bulletproof vest company. North's financial disclosure form shows he made over $1.5 million last year from book royalty and speaking fees, and he's been collecting political IOUs by helping local campaigns in Virginia. Oliver North will appear on CNN's Larry King Live tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern.
A natural gas explosion has turned a Queens, New York deli.
Cambodian student fired a starter pistol at Britain's Prince Charles today in Sydney. The prince neither was hurt nor visibly disturbed by the incident, as Nicholas Owen now reports.
On the country's most cherished celebration, Australia Day, Prince Charles was about to make a speech to school children. 2 shots rang out. His personal detective elbowed the prince out of harm's way, checked the attacker, and then shepherded Charles to safety. The attacker was wrestled to the floor. He'd run fast from the front of the crowd, firing a starting pistol, and got within a few feet of the prince. Other guests moved forward to check that Prince Charles was unscathed. In the confusion in front of a huge crowd, it seemed for a few terrible moments to those of us present that a serious attempt had been made on the prince's life. The prince, with extraordinary coolness, continued his speech.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen.
The Premier of New South Wales had been on the platform.
His Royal Highness has asked me to assure you that he is unconcerned, he is not upset, and his major concern is the fact that what has otherwise been a marvellous day has been spoilt by that small incident.
Australian television reported that the attacker was David Kang, a 23-year-old university student who'd already written to the prince protesting about the condition of Cambodian boat people, some 200 of whom are held here. The prince wants protection measures kept relaxed as they have been so far on this 2-week tour. But the police here are making it clear they want security tightened up considerably. Nicholas Owen, ITN, Sydney.
Well, coming next on Early Prime, high-rolling teenagers. The stakes are high, the payoff uncertain.
Teenagers who could be gambling away their futures. A report straight ahead.
CNN's Early Prime, news and information for people in the prime of life.
The big difference between these eggs and our eggs is that our eggs don't crack under pressure. Of course, our eggs don't have any fat or cholesterol either. Egg beaters. We're good eggs. Where do you find new egg beaters? Same place you find eggs, in the egg section. Of course, you'll still find us in the freezer section, too. Egg.
Principal Financial Group can guide you toward your goals with flexible insurance, solid investment strategies, stability you can count on. No wonder people have been coming to the Principal for over a century to secure your future. To get an advantage, get the Principal Edge, the Principal Financial Group.
This is the all-new GMC Sonoma. There are so many changes that we couldn't tell you about all of them in 30 seconds, so we wrote a book about it. Call 1-800-GMC-TRUCK and check one out. Sonoma from GMC Truck.
Nobody else has it. Only Headline News Sports Ticker continuously updates scores in a flash, even while games are in progress. Headline News Sports Ticker, weekday evenings and all weekend long. From now on, you'll always know the score.
Quickly, Minneapolis with Don Regan and Ted Sorensen. Hello.
Yeah, Larry, just real quick. I flew some of the relief missions into Somalia, and it kind of bothers me how you never hear about George Bush's role about getting us there to start with. You always hear Clinton's failure in Somalia, but people never seem to remember that we went there under George Bush, and and George Bush sold it, that how easy it would be and how quick we could get out, but you never hear that point. All you hear is Clinton's glaring failure in Somalia, and I was wondering if Mr. Regan could comment on that.
Well, it is true that we went in there for humanitarian reasons. I think we've accomplished that. What the cameras aren't showing you are the well-fed or better-fed people that are there now. But having accomplished that mission, there was no sense in standing around and having a lot of our troops hurt in the middle of tribal conflicts.
Only got 30 seconds. Is Clinton going to get a health care plan this year, Ted?
I think he will. I think it may not be exactly the plan that he has put forward to Congress, but he's made it front and center for the nation as a whole, and I think the nation wants one.
I'm not sure. I think it's going to be quite a bit of battle, and I think a lot of other things will come first. I think we'll get a crime bill and welfare reform and a few other things like that.
Thank you both very much. Thanks for joining us, Ted. Nice seeing you again, Don. Tomorrow night we won't be with you. Bill Clinton is here for the State of the Union address. We're back Wednesday with Ollie North. Standing by to co-anchor the World News, Susan Rook and Lyndon Souls in Atlanta. Lyndon, what's up?
Larry, Hollywood is buzzing tonight about a new development concerning allegations of sexual molestation against Michael Jackson. Several sources say the pop music superstar is offering a multi-million-dollar out-of-court settlement to the boy who made the accusation. Do authorities have enough evidence to arrest skater Tonya Harding in connection with the attack on rival skater Nancy Kerrigan? Plus, a fishy tale of coming back from the dead. Next on World News.
Coming up, World News, followed by Sports Tonight, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
You know, I used to have chest pain, and I thought the worst. My son insisted I get a complete checkup at Diagnostic Clinic.
It's time for answers. Refer someone you love to Diagnostic Clinic of Houston, 797-9191.
I'm Catherine Tyra. I want to be your county judge because I care about our children. As district clerk, I fought to deliver nearly $1 million in lost child support to Harris County families. I believe efficient and effective government is necessary to solve our problems. As county judge, I'll fight crime and drugs and hold the line on government spending.
Doing it right at Sam White. Sam White's Sport Utility Super Sale continues with over 80 new Isuzu Troopers, Houston's best selection. Take one home today. Doing it right at Sam White. Two-wheel and four-wheel drive Nissan Pathfinders in abundance. Super sale price just in time for hunting season. Take one home today. Doing it right at Sam White. The ultimate sport utility, all-wheel drive Oldsmobile Bravada at Sam White's low, no haggle prices. Take one home today. We're doing it right at Sam White. Motor City on Beechnut at the Southwest Freeway.
I'm glad I referred my father to Diagnostic Clinic for his chest pain. His checkup was fine, and now we both have peace of mind.
It's time for answers. Refer someone you love to Diagnostic Clinic of Houston, 797-9191.
You know, all my life I've worked with the best. So when I needed a new truck, I just naturally went to Mack Hike Ford. I met all the folks at Mack Hike Ford, the body shop, the parts department, and the service drive. They got the best Ford team in Texas. And when they explained their price protection guarantee, heck, I knew I was going to get the best price, too.
You don't have to be Bum Phillips to get the best of Mac High Ford. You just have to tell them Bum sent you.
This is CNN.
This is CNN World News with Susan Brooke and Lyndon Souls.
The Supreme Court hands a powerful legal weapon to supporters of abortion rights. But will it stop the protests? The #2 man at the Pentagon could soon be #1. Meet the president's new defense secretary nominee.
Los Angeles earthquake victims can look forward to billions of dollars in federal aid. President Clinton plans to ask Congress for a whopping assistance plan. Congress will also be busy reading the Packwood diaries after a judge orders the senator to turn over sensitive personal papers. Thank you for joining us on World News. More on those stories in a moment.
But first, our top story. A 5-month nightmare may be nearing an end for Michael Jackson.
Soon, the 2 best teams in football will be coming here to Atlanta for Super Bowl 28.
And we'll be right here to greet them.
Show them our town and its Southern hospitality.
And catch all the action leading up to the big game.
Join Nick and Fred for Sports Tonight at the Super Bowl on CNN.
He wants to lay the groundwork for next year's agenda. First and foremost, getting health care reform passed, guaranteeing private insurance to every American. And he thinks that by pushing that forward tonight, we can get some momentum behind the bill.
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, Pat Buchanan. Tonight, Blueprint for America. In the Crossfire, Republican Senator Phil Gramm of Texas and Democratic Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts.
Good evening and welcome to Crossfire. 90 minutes from now, President Clinton will deliver his first formal State of the Union address. And as Mr. Clinton rides up to Capitol Hill, his spirits must be soaring. For the economy is booming, and his approval rating is higher than Ronald Reagan's was after his first year in office. After 12 long years, Democrats are again humming, "Happy days are here again." The focus of Mr. Clinton's address is expected to be on domestic policy, with health care, welfare reform, and crime control all getting equal time. But don't expect anything new, we are told, though the White House will claim that its policies have already produced a huge reduction in the federal deficit. So tonight, the salad days of the Clintonites. How long can they last, Michael?
That was a remarkably generous introduction, Pat. We've entered an era of good feelings, as you can hear this, Phil Gramm. The economy is booming, the deficit's shrinking, the Republicans are coming around on health care reform. I'll give this to you. The Democrats are coming around on crime. The Democrats and Republicans are virtual agreement on welfare. This could be a very productive and amicable session of Congress unless you guys decide to be the skunks at the picnic. Is that your plan?
Well, Michael, I think there's a strong element of truth in what you say. I think if the president will give up on the idea of having the government take over and run the health care system.
Now, there you go.
If he'll give up on the idea of taking away...
And then says you want choice. It's not, you guys apply a lot of arguments to something that doesn't exist. This is a program of choice. You can choose which program you want, and it's going to be much more... It's already happening.
I'm going to let Phil Gramm take care of that, but let me get John Kerry look.
Well,
I think what most Americans say is...
But the minute we point out a truth, you want to move away from it.
No,
I mean, I'm trying to point out the reality of what the president is offering.
Let me get one point here. I think what most Americans are saying, look, if there's people that want health insurance and don't have it, let's find a way for them to get it.
Correct.
But I've got a fine program. Don't take over my program. Don't socialize it. I mean, don't change my program. Take care.
But you see, you're saying socialize. This is a competitive system. I don't happen to agree with all of the system. And the system the president has put together is at least the opening gambit of the first discussion of a major problem this country faces, which you and your folks and your president avoided for years.
Well, now, wait,
finally,
Nixon tried to do it 20 years ago.
Avoided for years. That's right. He was the last Republican to do it. And since then, you've had Ford, Reagan, and Bush, and none of them.
At first, You got to give people, you got to supply people with, it costs more to put people to work than to just send them a check. That is the bitter truth which you have avoided and which Clinton's avoided too.
I think, let me tell you what I'd like to do.
So if you're serious about welfare reform, you've got to be prepared to spend a little money on it. Are you prepared?
I think the key is to do this, is to require everybody on welfare to either go to school, and with welfare mothers at home, we can do a computer-based correspondence course tailored to their needs. We can require everybody to work, pick up paper on the streets, clean up public parks.
Won't that cost more than the current system, which nobody likes, at least at first?
No, I think what will happen is if people have got to work anyway, they'll decide to go out and get a job.
John Kerry, let me quote you what the president's going to say tonight. They've released these excerpts. It says, our goal is to guarantee private insurance for every American, something proposed by Richard Nixon more than 20 years ago. That's what we want, guaranteed private insurance. Is the president moving away from his idea based on some of this criticism of socialized medicine he's got?
No, it's not, but that's the point. You guys keep throwing these terms out, and you love it. This is the way politics is played here. Throw out socialist medicine, Phil comes in.
From people the right to choose their insurance and their doctor.
There you go.
If the president will put his program where his mouth is on crime, and I'm glad, you got to remember last year he cut prison construction by $580 million. He and the Attorney General spent the year trying to repeal minimum mandatory sentencing. Tonight he's going to do a 180, and I welcome him to being on the right side. Finally, in welfare reform, the American people want everybody on welfare to either work or to go to school. They want more people to get out of the wagon and help to pull it, and if the president will support those things, he's going to have no stronger supporter than me.
The president was back on that one long before the Republicans were. That's been his...
I think the problem, Michael, and again, I'm hoping tonight we're going to hear a concrete program that will really take people off welfare, that will really push people out of the wagon and help them get a place at the traces. I am concerned, forgive me, but in the past, when Democrats have talked about welfare reform, they've meant more spending, not less. I hope it's different.
Well, now,
tonight.
wait a minute, because the truth about 2 years and you're out, which everyone agrees on, Republicans and Democrats, is that it will cost more.